The morning breaks clear and cool over New England. The streets hum with early day excitement. It is Patriots' Day, and for Bostonians that means the Boston Marathon, a century-old celebration of endurance, spirit, and community. By mid-morning, tens of thousands of runners stream through the towns of Hopkinton, Ashland, Framingham, and Newton toward the finish line at Copley Square. Spectators press against metal railings, waving flags and handmade signs. Volunteers in yellow jackets hand out water cups, while the city's skyline glimmers beneath the pale spring sun. The Boston Marathon has always been more than a race. It is a tradition older than Fenway Park, a day when people from every walk of life share the same streets. Families line Boylston Street, waiting to see loved ones appear from the final corner. The air is filled with applause, laughter, and the rhythmic beat of sneakers on pavement. At 2 p.m., the elite runners have long since crossed the finish line, but thousands of others still push forward. The sidewalks are crowded outside Marathon Sports and the Forum restaurant. Among the spectators are tourists, locals, and children perched on their parents' shoulders. At 2:49 p.m., celebration becomes catastrophe. A sudden concussive blast tears through the crowd near 671 Boylston Street. Smoke surges upward, swallowing the blue sky. Before anyone can comprehend what has happened, a second explosion detonates 13 seconds later, farther down the street, outside 755 Boylston. In an instant, cheers turn to screams. Dust and debris fill the air. Runners collapse or freeze in place. Police officers sprint toward the source of the explosions, while volunteers pull down barricades to clear paths for medics. Within minutes, sirens echo through the Back Bay. Ambulances converge, and strangers turn into rescuers. Doctors who had just finished the race rush back toward the finish line to treat the wounded. The marathon's medical tents transform into triage centers. Emergency teams move with practiced speed, tending to the injured and coordinating transport to hospitals across the city. Massachusetts General, Brigham and Women's, and Beth Israel Deaconess prepare operating rooms within minutes. By late afternoon, the magnitude of the tragedy begins to settle in. 3 people have lost their lives: 8-year-old Martin Richard from Dorchester, 29-year-old Crystal Campbell of Medford, and 23-year-old Lingzi Liu, a graduate student from China. More than 260 others are injured. Yet even amid horror, stories of courage emerge. Strangers comforting each other. First responders risking their safety to save lives. A city rallying before the smoke has even cleared. Governor Deval Patrick declares a state of emergency.
We're asking people to shelter in place, in other words, to stay indoors with their doors locked and not to open the door.
Mayor Thomas Menino, speaking from his hospital bed, promises that Boston will endure.
The day of the marathon bombings, he was in the hospital. He was recovering from leg surgery when the bombs went off. Against doctors' orders, he got his nurses to sneak him out the back door. He then led his city through a crisis.
That evening, President Barack Obama addresses the nation from the White House. His words are calm but resolute. Anytime bombs are used to target innocent civilians, it is an act of terror. We will find out who did this. We will hold them accountable. Night falls over a city in shock. Boylston Street is cordoned off behind yellow tape. Evidence markers dot the pavement where hours earlier marathoners had celebrated. The FBI's Boston field office assumes command of the investigation. Forensic teams search inch by inch, collecting fragments of metal and plastic, pieces of backpacks, and shattered electronics. By April 17th, investigators know more. The devices were built from pressure cookers filled with shrapnel and triggered remotely. It is a method familiar to counter-terrorism experts, suggesting that whoever built them had studied bomb-making instructions circulating online. Yet nothing else is known. The search intensifies. In the FBI's command center, analysts focus on footage from a department store camera near the first explosion. Two young men appear in the crowd, one wearing a dark cap and jacket, the other a white cap turned backward. Each carries a backpack. They walk calmly through the throng of spectators, pausing near the finish line. Moments later, the first blast occurs. For 2 days, investigators keep the images secret, verifying identities before making them public. The pressure builds as media speculation grows. Then, on Thursday, April 18th, Special Agent Richard Deslauriers steps before the cameras at a press conference. Behind him, enlarged photos show the two men, now known as Suspect 1 and Suspect 2. He urges the public to study the images carefully. We need your help in identifying them, but do not approach these individuals. They are considered armed and extremely dangerous. Within hours, the photos are everywhere, on television, on the internet, on every smartphone in America. Calls pour into the FBI's hotline. Tip after tip. Boston braces for what might come next. At the Massachusetts Institute of Technology in Cambridge, 27-year-old campus police officer Sean Collier sits in his cruiser near Vassar Street. At 10:25 p.m., two men approach and open fire, attempting to steal his service weapon. Collier is killed instantly. The suspects flee into the night. Minutes later, a carjacking is reported in nearby Alston, Brighton. The driver, forced at gunpoint into his own Mercedes SUV, is held captive, while the two men confess to being behind the marathon bombings. He escapes unharmed at a gas station and alerts police. The car's GPS tracker becomes the clue that changes everything. Just after midnight, law enforcement vehicles swarm the suburb of Watertown. Officers spot the stolen SUV. When they move to intercept it, the suspects open fire and throw homemade explosives from the car. Gunshots echo through residential streets. In the exchange, one suspect, later identified as Tamerlan Tsarnaev, age 26, was critically wounded and taken into custody. He was pronounced dead at Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center soon after. His younger brother, Dzhokhar, escaped the scene on foot, disappearing into the darkness of nearby backyards. The quiet suburb becomes a battlefield of flashing lights and sirens. Residents huddle in basements while police sweep block by block. Boston holds its breath. The hunt for the younger Tsarnaev has begun, and the city that just days ago celebrated triumph now stands together in fear and defiance. 4 days earlier, these streets echoed with celebration. Now, they carry the weight of loss and the promise of resilience. Boston waits not for the end of fear, but for the proof that courage will always rise to meet it. April 19th, 2013. The sun rises over a city locked down. Helicopters trace slow circles above Boston and the nearby towns of Cambridge and Watertown. Streets that would normally hum with early commuters are empty. Doors stay shut, blinds drawn. The order is clear. No one leaves home until the suspect is found. Law enforcement mobilizes on a scale rarely seen in American history. Nearly 10,000 officers, agents, and soldiers from federal, state, and local agencies coordinate under one mission: to locate Dzhokhar Tsarnaev, the 19-year-old now believed to have carried out the Boston Marathon bombing alongside his brother, Tamerlan. In the hours since the gunfight in Watertown, investigators have pieced together the brothers' story. Born in Kyrgyzstan, raised for a time in Dagestan and Chechnya, the Tsarnaev family immigrated to the United States seeking a better life. But over time, Tamerlan, the older brother, had grown isolated, obsessed with extremist material online, and disillusioned with his place in America. Dzhokhar, once described as friendly and easygoing, followed his lead. The two retreated into a distorted ideology that turned violent, a belief system that no true faith or community would ever claim. As police move through Watertown, they knock on every door, search every yard, every shed. Then, a call comes into the Watertown Police Department. A resident on Franklin Street, David Henneberry, reports something strange.
I have a boat in my yard. There's blood all over the inside. There's a person in the boat. Are you sure? I just looked in the boat.
The tarp on his boat in the backyard is ripped, and there's a smear of blood on its side. He climbs a ladder, peers through the opening, and sees a body curled inside. Police swarm the area within minutes. Officers surround the property, setting up a perimeter. Sharpshooters take positions on neighboring roofs. A helicopter hovers overhead, using thermal imaging, and it confirms movement inside the boat. For more than 2 hours, negotiations unfold. Officers use loudspeakers to demand surrender. Then, a burst of gunfire erupts, brief, chaotic, followed by silence. Finally, a young man emerges, bloodied and weak, raising his hands. The manhunt is over. Dzhokhar Tsarnaev is taken into custody at 8:42 p.m. Relief spreads like a wave through Boston. Residents step out of their homes, clapping as police convoys drive past. Some wave flags, others shout, "Thank you," or simply cry. Across the city, a chant rises spontaneously, "Boston Strong." The week after the bombing, a memorial service is held at the Cathedral of the Holy Cross. President Obama, Governor Patrick, and Mayor Menino attend alongside thousands of mourners. Meanwhile, the legal process begins. Tsarnaev is charged with using a weapon of mass destruction and the murder of 4 people: Martin Richard, Crystal Campbell, Lingzi Liu, and Officer Sean Collier. The surviving victims, their families, and the entire city watch as justice takes its course. In 2015, after a lengthy and emotional trial, a jury finds him guilty on all counts. During sentencing, survivors speak directly to him, their words filled not with vengeance, but strength. Some choose forgiveness. Others simply ask for understanding of what was lost. The court sentences him to death. Appeals continue for years, but the verdict and the truth of what happened remain unchanged. Out of the tragedy, a powerful movement emerges. Boston Strong becomes more than a slogan. It becomes a symbol of unity, resilience, and compassion. On April 15th each year, the city pauses for a moment of silence at 2:49 p.m. to honor those lost. The bombing changes how cities across the world prepare for large public events. Security measures are strengthened, communication between agencies improved, and emergency response systems modernized. Yet the deeper legacy is not fear, it is unity. Boston's strength is reflected not just in its police or first responders, but in its people. The shop owners who open their doors to the displaced, the runners who return to finish their miles, the doctors and nurses who refused to rest, and the citizens who stood shoulder to shoulder in defiance of terror. In the years since, the Boston Marathon has regained its rhythm. Each April, thousands gather once more along Boylston Street, the same street that witnessed devastation, to celebrate endurance, hope, and humanity. When the first runners cross the finish line, the crowd erupts, not in fear, but in triumph. Tragedy tested Boston, but it did not break it. The city ran again. The people came together again. From grief came courage, and from darkness, light. The story of the Boston Marathon will forever carry the memory of loss and the spirit of a city that proved, in its hardest hour, what it truly means to be strong.